welcome to another episode of the Heathen Wyrdos Podcast. It's Pride Month. Heathenry has a really interesting reputation as a very masculine religion, and unfortunately there's a pretty massive tendency for bigotry and also folkism in a lot of heathen spaces. So we thought we would take today to highlight some queer stuff in heathen lore, practice, history, and the like. This is super important to us because we're all part of these communities. I'm Kenna. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm very bisexual.
I'm Theo. My pronouns are they, them. I'm non-binary, and I am some form of pansexual and demisexual.
Hey, it is me, Sif. My pronouns are she, her, and I am also, like Kenna, very bisexual.
I love very bisexual. Okay. So is heathenry inclusive and accepting of the LGBTQ plus community? Yes.
Oh.
What do you
want us to take the points?
I want you to answer that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it definitely is. We are definitely all about Declaration 127. In the Declaration of Deeds, we will probably link those below. That seems like something we would do. All up here in this house that we run.
Yes, I would say heathenry itself is inclusive, and then we don't talk about the others.
And then we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is nothing inherent to the law that says no. So it is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Definition.
There's nothing inherent in the lore that says no gay. Doesn't exist. If you find yourself among people who say that heathenry is inherently not accepting of the LGBTQ community, you should go away from them. They suck.
Run.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because even if, like, the peoples back in the prime Norse heathen religion time, you're welcome, we're, like, kind of shitty towards people who are non-hetero, do we need to recreate that? Why?
Nah.
Why would we? Like, it's 2022. Let's keep going, guys. Like,
yeah, none of that reject modernity. None of that.
Well, but also, like, my biggest thing about, like, people who are anti, like, LGBT, anti-trans, blah, 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 I've never understood why someone cared so much about someone else's life and how they lived it in a way that wasn't hurting anyone else to be like, you're gross, and, like, move beyond, like, a base level of respect just because someone, like, is not cishet.
What is the Norse equivalent to Amen?
Thor.
Skull.
Hail Frick. Skull. Actually, yeah, that's unironically probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I stand.
Skull is weird.
We'll find a better one.
We should make a better one.
We're gonna make a better one.
I don't know what, like, okay, so skull is not necessarily brosa-true. But
they just took it.
It just deeply resonates within my soul as, like, a brosa-true thing.
Mm-hmm. Reclaim it.
But that is a personal feeling.
When we think about Norse heathenry and gay stuff, probably the first thing you think of is the term Ergi. Sif, do you want to talk about Ergi?
It essentially means unmanly, and that was considered a very high insult in the Viking Age. Viking Age people. It's a term that's thrown around quite a bit, specifically, weirdly, by Loki to Odin in the lore.
Yeah, that was really a choice.
Which is, yeah, and, you know, there's certain bad parts of heathenry do like to bring this up, of Ergi being considered this massive cursing insult, because it was considered essentially a curse. And yeah, but you got to think about it in context of it's Loki here telling that to Odin. I mean,
yeah.
Glass houses and all of that.
It's
as it were.
Yeah. Does Odin not throw that right back at him?
I feel like that's a thing.
Yeah.
Or should
Yeah.
be. Okay, like I was gonna say like glass houses, but also it's like Loki's some kind of goblin or something.
Yeah.
Weird.
Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it is taken to basically mean unmanliness and then by extension gay in the worst corners of heathenry. But what it needs to be noted, and this is the huge caveat here, is that it wasn't a term applied to all gay men, as it were. It was the idea of specifically taking on the more submissive aspect being a bottom, as it were, rather than homosexuality full stop. So that is the big caveat here, is that they didn't really care, because it was a term meaning like if you were submissive, if you were a bottom, it means that you were not a leader, you couldn't raise a proper family and all of that. And it was a case of what you see a lot in all of this is like a power dynamic, in that the raids were a form of the intense violence was asserting your power over another group of people, and obviously that's when the heinous acts happened during those raids as well, was a case of really it was a power dynamic. It was a show of power amongst other things. They were taking their gold. They were saying that you are weaker than us, we're taking that and we're leaving. So it was a case of very much the manly man is someone who holds the power. They're not submissive, they are leaders, they can take what they want.
And I don't know if it is a proven theory, but it is a theory that Sif and I have talked about at least, that part of the reason that male practitioners of Seder were called Ergi as well is because of that idea of reception. Because Seder is kind of about pulling in and receiving messages and communication from the spirit realm, kind of, sort of. That idea of being receptive kind of carries over from what we've seen.
I've written about it in the past, because this is very much my sphere. I like all of this stuff, but there was also an element of, and I hate the term, but poison is a woman's weapon, in that it was seen that if you practice Seither, you could be in a tent miles away from the action, as it were, and you could, through nefarious means, gain an upper hand in battle. And it was seen as you look your enemies in the eye, you swing that sword, and you kill them, but yourself, with your physical body, with honor, exactly. And that was seen as obviously not. It was seen as it's a woman's tool, and that she sits outside of the battle and does all this. But it's a whole complex thing, and of course, I'll probably get onto it in the Seither episode whenever that happens. It's very complex, and of course, because we don't have much information on it, some of it is inference and guesswork. It's all of that.
So it kind of sounds like Ergi, in addition to being gay, but specifically the bottom, is kind of also effectively one word to call someone a bitch boy. And I know that that's not very official, but that's very much like, effectively they're calling these men little bitches is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You act like a woman would, which the gender roles aren't they're very different to what we see today, and also in the history there was very much some women held power in their own way. Like, for instance, they could divorce men, and that was considered pretty serious, because at that point you were giving up, your ability to have children, which is obviously quite important to them, in terms of like passing down like deeds and titles and whatnot, if you had them. It was very much a very different dynamic. So, which means that it's harder to draw like parallels properly, because it was an entirely different sort of framework.
I've heard people describe the general system that we can actually see in lore, and not in lore is the wrong word, in like the sagas and stuff, as a single gender system rather than a double gender system, because it seems to be very man and there is not man. rather than there is man and there is woman. There is man and there is not man.
They were defined by very different behaviors. It's complicated, and it's complicated to get your head around, but I think it does it a disservice to see gender as it is today, which is obviously something we're relearning almost, and realizing it's a spectrum and not a binary. And in their scenario, they didn't see it as a binary either, not in that kind of bam bam, 2 women and men thing. So yeah, it's an interesting topic to go into, because you can't go in with any sort of expectations in terms of the modern experience.
Yeah, it doesn't fit our system at all.
But it's interesting.
And if it did, it would be stupid to call anybody Ergi because they do magic or because they're gay. We don't insult people, and we don't need to. If you want to reclaim that, I think that's super valid. And there's actually an article, I Can Do Words, on a website called The Scald's Keep, which is run by a non-binary human person. And they wrote about the reclamation of Ergi in modern Norse heathenry, which is a fun read. Super interesting. Amazing. Yeah, I looked through there, sound nothing wild. They mention dog whistles and things in a couple places. So I feel fairly confident in saying that they're an okay place to not research, but read up. It's more modern. It's not all history and facts, but it's fun. I enjoy it.
So yes, Ergi is being reclaimed as a title. I know a few people that use it, and actually I think all of them in some way have delved into Seither. So yeah, it's definitely a title that's changing, and I like it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. All right, shall we move to crossing gender boundaries in lore, but besides Loki, because Loki gets his own bullet point?
Yes.
Loki deserves their own bullet point. I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
So since my first bullet point is Odin learning Seder, do you want to talk about that, Sif? Because it's Seder.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's deep dive into the brain. Yeah, so we know that through various, I think it's mentioned at least 3 times in the lore, that Odin learned Seither. And because Seither was seen as, quote unquote women's magic, it's interesting to note that the supposed, High Lord of Asgard would undertake such learnings. And indeed, he learned from Freyja, as we know in Heimskringla, I believe, that the Vanir practiced Seither. And Freyja taught Odin. And I think it's actually Freyja taught the Aesir, so it wasn't just Odin. We can probably assume that a few other gods joined in as well. We know that in Lokasenna, Loki actually says that, but people say that you practiced womanly magic on Samsi dressed as a woman. So we know that Odin actually cross-dressed, breaking those boundaries and becoming a woman. And yeah, crossing those gender boundaries. And we see that also with Thor, this supposed really kind of masculine epitome of what the Vikings would have liked about a man. He put on a wedding dress to get Mjolnir back and pretended to be Freyja during that scenario.
And apparently pulled it off so well that they all thought he was hot.
Yep, exactly. He got away with being Freyja.
The only thing that tells me that Freyja, and also Viking women in general, the hotness factor was directly correlated to the level of jackedness.
Yep.
Yes.
So yeah, it's Freyja being hecka buff is valid.
Watch me start dedicating workouts to Freyja. Just
do it
to get that.
Oh my god.
It is very much a thing of, we also see it archaeologically embodying that sort of what you might have thought in, the Viking Age as being, as we said, Ergi, something very kind of not taboo, but I guess in that every things. In fact, actually, probably very much taboo. But it's interesting to see Odin himself as doing this, and it's several times in the lore. He says, he turned into a woman, he donned women's clothes.
That one
to learn it.
gets me because specifically usually within like Odinist or like really gross heathen circles, like not Brositru so much as like the Nazis doing their thing, they tend to really worship Odin as a like super masculine god. And I wonder if you've read the same Eddas as me, pal. Because
I'll read them again.
Yeah, I think you missed some key points there.
I was gonna say.
I mean, I'm probably gonna get into this a bit more. What were you saying, Theo?
I was gonna say, like, I'm not saying Odin's not a man by any means, but like, if we're talking like manly man and bro guy or whatever you want to call that shit, like, I do not consider Odin like a super manly person, god thing.
I don't know anyone that does. In our heathen circles, at least, it's very well known that he's like poet walking the edge of the earth, witch god. Like, there is masculinity in it. Still a war god and a king god, but
yeah.
Whew.
I mean, it's like he has a personality or something.
I do enjoy reading about Odin and kind of going into that sort of theory regarding him, because he's very much a god that likes pushing boundaries.
Right.
And that's a theme that carries over pretty much everything in terms of Odin. He likes to push social boundaries, especially when you consider the social like constructs at the time. He's very much about, you know, crossing over into the realms of death, which for a god is, you know, almost impossible. He likes, you know, hanging himself on a tree to learn about forbidden knowledge or lost knowledge, and you know that in itself could be an entire episode. But you know, I really like Odin for all of that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's super complex and cool. So funny. This is even like in the modern conception of who Odin is as a god, it's super masculine. Like, I know a couple people in the military who are doing this like Norse mythology like unit theme thing, and Odin is their leader, and when he yells his own name you have to yell it back. I'm like, dude, that's really cool and all, but it's not the like manly man flex that you think it is.
Nope.
It's fun. Odin is fantastic.
For good reason. He's becoming a bit of a trans icon, just because of the way he presents himself, and that's fantastic. So yeah, it's a case of even today, you know, the lore, which hasn't really changed over centuries, is being reinterpreted in different ways, and you know, I'm all for it.
Yes.
Times are changing,
and we love it.
Join the change train.
Yeah.
The change train.
I think that's everything we want to. Do you want to go on to? I will talk more about Seitha, but I don't want it to become the Seitha episode. So.
I think it should.
It's the Pride episode.
It's surprise.
It's the
Oops, I'll say it. We'll
Seitha
pop down
episode
to
part 1 with a hint of pride.
Yep.
We're gonna rebrand Seder as Gay Magic. That's what we're doing here today.
I'm chill with that.
Yes, I'll live for that.
So yeah, we'll move on to Loki in general, because Loki gets their own bullet point, because goodness, fantastic amount of information about Loki doing queer shit. So we have the Ergi Seder. We have the fact that Loki was mask presenting and practiced magic. The absolute gall and audacity of Loki to go, Odin, you're being gay while doing all of this? Incredible. I live for that level of goblinry.
Yeah, I've got the verse here. It's verse 23. I know that you for 8 years lived on the earth down below as a cow in milk and as a woman, and you've given birth to children. So, yeah, that's pretty absolute, to be honest.
That's Odin to Loki, you've given birth to children? Yeah. Fantastic.
Loki's given birth to children more than once. Like,
yeah. That's so funny. Loki effectively threw, you do lady magic, and Odin goes, you've had babies.
Yep. And it's funny because that Odin says that, and then Loki responds with, you were dressed as a woman, and he's just like, but that is Ergi.
Oh, like, yes, the real gay here.
It's like they're trying to prove who is gayer.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Lokasana is such an incredible poem. Oh my
so
goodness.
Fucking weird. Oh my god.
It's so weird, but it goes so hard. Loki pulls no punches.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's great.
It gets a bit repetitive in the middle.
Yeah.
You sleep around, and you sleep around.
No,
and
you sleep around.
Like, aren't we supposed to be fighting? This is just equalization.
It's almost like
I
all
actually
the
mentioned
gods
it.
are goblins.
Yes.
Yeah, I also mention it a bit later on, but there is like poly acceptance in this as well, in that Njotha has absolutely no reaction to Freyr being accused of sleeping around.
Right.
It's like, it is a small matter if a woman sleeps with her own man or others.
Oh, I want that on a sticker.
Right.
I want that on a feminist sticker. I
mean,
love
it's just
that.
like,
We have the ability,
normal.
Kenna.
I know.
Put it in the merch thing.
Okay. I'm doing too many things at once, but I will.
Proud of you.
and I guess side note while we're still on this, in verse 30, there is a mention of Freyja laying with all of the gods and elves in the hall. There is no mention of gender here. So there we go. I'm just going to throw that out. We're probably going to build on that later on. But as you were.
Okay. So we have Loki doing Seder. Women's magic was considered Ergi. Super cool. Love that. We have so many instances of gender bending in the lore. My favorite part about this is that when you talk to people who are unaccepting within heathen circles, they will die on the hill that Loki did not change his gender, only his species. And I think that's hilarious.
What?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you also get people that demonize Loki, as in it's the kind of the rule, the exception, even not the rule. That Loki is the exception in all this, which is not true, of course.
No. Well, and also,
but
like,
yeah, that's the fallback.
a lot of the start of demonization with Loki is really tied into Christianization of the lore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to have some kind of devil figure or something.
Right.
No. Get out of my pluralist religion.
No.
It's the whole point of it. It's the whole of like self-fulfilling prophecy and all that.
Yes.
That there's no bad guys throughout what, let's say, if Ragnarok did happen. You could easily point a finger to Jormungandr and Fenrir, but there was the case that they were villainized from the outset, so really they were made into villains.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another episode.
I mean, well, that's also a common trope throughout, like, various historical lores and writings, where it's like, it's foretold that, like, oh, this is going to bring you down and stuff, and the person that's going to be brought down is like, no, I don't want that. So they like start being like doing shitty things to that person, like, you know, tying them up in chains and stuff. And betraying them, and it's like, you know, whereas if you'd just been nice to them,
if you just chilled,
like,
if you were just chill,
if you were
the
just
Norns
chill,
really do have a twisted sense of humor.
Yeah. Yep. Giggling. Wouldn't it be funny if we
Let's tell him? It's very along the same vibes as the witches at the beginning of Macbeth.
Oh yeah.
Let's just ruin this guy's life for the lulz.
I just imagine the Norns having like a little butcher countertop island with like a little tea kettle on it and like a little fire where they like, or like, I don't know, some cooking receptacle where they like make tea and like scones and shit, and then like they sit around and have tea time every so often, like drinking their tea, and they're just like, let's do this. Yeah. Let's do this.
Exactly. You know what would be super fun? This idea specifically.
And then they like, whatever, for some reason I'm like, oh, and then they look into the well and they see everything. I don't think that's actually how it works. But then they all take their tea over to the well and they just like sit there giggling, watching it as if it was a TV.
Oh yeah. I am pay someone to draw that someday, Sif.
Okay. So, I got time.
Yeah. Do you?
No.
We'll get there when we get there.
Maybe after June.
I mean,
June
my
is
time
very
will free up.
It's not a
hard
rush.
month.
June sucks right now.
June is gonna be rough.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be rough for you, Globetrotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm causing a lot of problems for myself, and I love it. Okay.
Okay.
We're on gender bending in the lore. Loki's gender bending in the lore. So we
Yes.
have
Mhm.
the one that stands out to me is the story of the birth of Sleipnir, because we got Loki changing species and gender and birthing and mothering a small 8-legged horse, which is just wonderful.
Aw.
Poor little baby.
Mhm.
I love Sleipnir.
I like the idea of Anger both though, just being like, what is happening? Where do I stand in this? Like, just, oh, that's such cuteness.
And then
Oh, okay.
Odin claims Sleipnir as his horse and rides his nephew into battle.
Yeah, I really need to know the conversation that happened there. It's just, I need this horse for reasons.
I've seen various
like,
comics. Okay. I've seen various comics of like Odin like training with Sleipnir or like wanting to go into battle, and Loki's like, "Excuse me," and Odin's like, "What?" And he's like, "It is fucking bedtime for my son." And Odin's like, "We have to go to battle," and Loki's like, "I am his mother." Like,
Yeah.
I think Loki would be a wonderful mother.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, I love that story. I know there are more stories. That's the one that my brain clung to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's Millie, get off my face.
Millie.
She's like, no, I want kisses.
I really like this bit here. I think it was you, Kenna, that put Thor cosplaying Freyja.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong.
Thor cosplays.
That's exactly what Thor was doing. Thor was cosplaying Freyja really well, but Loki was not cosplaying or cross-dressing. Loki was living his best life in that moment. Loki gets femme pronouns.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Like, and I know I've heard people argue that like it was just written that way because that's like phonetically or linguistically what made sense. I think it's
I don't buy it.
I think it's both because the lore is written very poetically in a lot of instances.
Yeah, it can be both.
But also like, I mean, but Thor still gets male pronouns and also like, whatever. Like,
let Loki have the femme
that's
pronouns.
the thing.
Everybody should just let have it.
mm-hmm.
I love that story. It's such a good one.
It is.
Then, Theo, you have praxis with Loki, right?
Yes.
You want to talk about the modern pronoun thing?
Which part of the modern pronoun thing? How, like, Loki is, in a lot of circles, actually, I think legally recognized as gender fluid now. Why do I say legally? I don't remember, like...
Canonically. Is that the term?
No, maybe canonically. Legally is not the word I want. Like, it was changed by some important entity to be like, Loki's gender fluid, LOL. And, like, and that's what I go with. And, like, I know I will not start on the number of people who have watched Tom Hiddleston in the Marvel universe and sexualized Loki in that way and been like, Loki is so masculine. Also, first off, like, no shade on Tom Hiddleston, but he is not that masculine. Like, he's very attractive, but, like, I'm not like, ooh, I need a, like, I'm thinking of a man's man, and I don't think of Tom Hiddleston. Anyways, which is totally fine. I think we've talked about it before, but my idea of gender is like, I don't give a shit about gender. Like I respect other people's genders because I am not going to force some kind of idea on someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I do expect the same respect in return.
Yeah.
But anyways, so like beyond like I don't know many people who like in Lokian circles that are like Loki's like super mask. Or like Loki's definitely just a man. Like, I do know some people that Loki only presents in one way to. And, you know, who knows, maybe that's just what they're most comfortable with or whatever, or, like, maybe they just don't, maybe that's just what Loki's doing at those times, or maybe they're just not getting the hints from other gender perspectives. And, like, I'm not even talking, like, it's only a man that they see. Like, it could only be woman Loki, or it could only be non-binary Loki, or whatever.
Right.
The only people I personally know of that have only interpreted Loki as a male deity are huge Loki fans from the Marvel Universe. That's only who I know. I'm not saying that anyone who sees Loki as a man is simping for Tom Hiddleston. Millie just sneezed in the background. Millie disagrees.
Bless you, Millie.
Sorry. Anyways, so working with Loki, like, it's just, I don't know, it's an interesting experience. It's so weird in my UPG. Like, it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like there are some deities that like I kind of know what to expect with them. Like I have like an idea. With Loki, it's just like, what the fuck is this? Like another Lokian I know recently was sitting at home, and it was like a cold snap, and they live in a city, and they like felt something tickling their knee, and they like moved their knee, and then it was tickling again. They're like, what the fuck? And they like lifted the blanket to discover this like large spider, and like they caught it and stuff, and like tried to look for mundane explanations, but like they live in the middle of the city, and it's a spider that's really only known to be in forests, in very wooded areas.
That's fun.
And they were like, they had gone hiking in a forest, so like they're like, I mean, it probably hitched a ride, but like this never happens, so like maybe it was just Loki coming to say hi or something like that. And I was like, like, what the fuck? That's so rude.
But Loki's a fucking goblin.
Yeah,
based on all of the things I have heard from others, Loki's a fucking goblin.
Loki is a goblin. Like, if I'm ever in a crowded area, like, I definitely feel like Loki's presence just being like, yes, like, so much shit is happening right now. Chaos.
Oh, just the intensest of extroversion. The intensity of Loki's extroversion. All of the people, chaos happening around you. Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I also interpret that as, like, I feel Loki more in my UPG, like, in those situations when I'm having, an introverted moment. Like, I definitely consider myself an ambivert, because I really like people, but also sometimes I'm like, oh god.
Yeah.
I definitely feel Loki more in those moments. Like, the last time, like, the first time I really noticed it, I was at a college football game for one of the top 10 college teams. And, like, oh my god, there were 80,000 people there.
Jesus.
I'm not a football fan. I went for a friend. And I'm okay if I never go to another football game again.
Incredible.
Anyways, I don't know. That was my ramble.
I love it. It was a good ramble.
Yes.
The point of the ramble is that pronouns are fluid for Loki in most people's modern experience.
And if they aren't, that's okay. But, like, don't shit on people.
Exactly that.
Like, I mean, if you're gonna go ahead and say that Loki's not gender fluid or whatever, I highly suggest you read the lore again. And have a deep think.
Call out. Deep think.
But also, like, if you're like, well, I only want to use these pronouns for Loki, or, like, even if Loki, like, you and Loki struck up some agreement that, like, you would only use male pronouns for Loki. Like, yeah, or, well, male pronouns. I don't like using female or male to describe gender because it's shitty.
Isn't it super fun, the limited vernacular we have to try to explain these things?
Right? Well, I mean, and it's just like, because male or female, like, when you tell someone you're a woman, they don't need to know what's in your pants.
Right.
There are not a lot of situations in which someone needs to know what's in your pants. So, like, using male or female, like, I do know there are some people that have taken those and have started reclaiming them as a gender identifier. I read about that years ago. I don't know if that's still a thing. But, like, it does have a serious connotation of, like, your biology.
Right.
And, like, I personally don't like it because it's like, no, just let people have gender. Gender and biological sex are not the same thing. Like, you can be a male and identify as a man. That's fine. You can be, yeah, anyways. I won't tangent too hard into that. But right on back to the original point. If someone's working with Loki and you and Loki have worked something out where you will only call Loki by he, him pronouns or something like that, and you get like you consistently get a more masculine feeling when Loki's around, like, that is valid. But don't be like, oh, you get a feminine presence with Loki and like you use they, them, or she, her. That's stupid. Like, no, like, just accept that other people are gonna have different UPG. Like, let Loki do what Loki wants.
Exactly. I love that. Let Loki do what Loki wants.
Loki's not hurting anyone the chunk of the time. Boundaries are good.
Loki's doing his best.
Yes.
Boundaries are good.
Boundaries are good.
Okay. Can we bounce on into implied homosexuality in the sagas? We don't have a ton of like straight out, he did gay stuff, but we do have a couple implications.
Mm-hmm.
Reading through old snippets of lore is really fun once you figure out what the innuendos are. Things like they sat together and mean they had sex. And it's really fun.
They were roommates.
Literally. And they shared a room. They boned.
We still need this Kenna like rewrite of the saga. This needs to happen.
God, that would be such a funny segment. Okay.
It would be a lot shorter too. Like more direct.
The Kenna rewrite of all of the sagas. Good lord.
I would fund that.
What you mean?
I
good
might
lore
toy with that. Good lore. We're gonna put that on a sticker too. That's funny.
Yes.
I'm gonna make that a thing. That's gonna be my heathenization of the very Christian "oh good lord" phrase that I say a lot because I live in a town with 27 churches.
Oh god.
We're gonna change it to Lord, Lord. That's happening.
Okay. That's chill.
Okay. The story that stuck out to me the most, because it's been discussed before online and in heathen spaces, is the story of Aaron and Asmund, the two, I don't know, I think, and they were tombmates, is basically the whole story there.
Yeah.
And we'll link a video that goes through that whole thing because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The story's been broken down really well by another YouTuber, so we're going to use that.
Yes.
The story is fantastic. They are very...
I'm sorry.
I love and they were tombmates. It's so good. The bulk of the story is that these were two best bros, the bestest of bros. So best bros that they vowed to like be buried together. Best bros.
Well, not just buried together. When the first one died, the other one would spend 3 days in the burial mound with them.
Chilling.
Like, just there. Spoilers, there are draugrs, but
yes.
Well,
turns into a horror story very quickly.
Well, also those are the two where one was a king and the other, he made the other co-king, and they split everything financially equally and like shared all possessions equally. They were just good friends.
Yes. Just really, really good bros being broy. It's so gay.
Like, I don't know how hard people really need to try to not see gay shit in the lore. Like, because, like, at that point, you're putting in an effort. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same vibe as those women in, like, the early 1900s that lived together and were best friends and did everything together and shared clothes and never married. And everyone's like, oh, they were just really good friends.
Yeah, just good friends. Totally
really
good friends.
The best of friends.
Just didn't want to live alone.
Yeah, no, who would want to live alone? It's fine.
Yep.
And Sif, you added Grettir in. Do you want to talk about that?
I was just flicking through. I'm almost entirely certain that Grettir basically has a lot of relations in his saga. Yes, and there's never a accusation of Ergi or unmanliness because of his battle prowess. So yeah, I know that it's basically one sentence every now and again, and then blah blah blah. And then actually,
so he's so manly that it doesn't matter who he bangs. It's fine because you make up for it by being a hardened badass.
Yeah, essentially he's always the top, so it's not gay.
It's not gay if you're the top.
God.
Oh, yeah, that's the Viking way. That's it right there.
There's other examples as well, but that was the one that kind of like, I was like, oh, okay, there's got to be. I'm pretty sure Grettir the Strong is very much in that area of things. He's very very gay, but also very bisexual and very pansexual. Pretty much anyone. Yeah.
Don't you mean
very
ultrasexual, Sif?
Ultrasexual.
Ultrasexual. I am so manly. Ultrasexual. Yes, I think that's basically it. There's I was trying to find a verse, but I couldn't find it because it's actually a really beefy saga.
It's massive. But I read through a book recently. I think I'll put it in the description somewhere. Women in Old Norse Society. And that author describes some of, quite literally, the words used here are Grettir's irrepressible sexuality.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And it's that.
I do like that saga. It's a good one. It's just the kind of offhanded way it describes everything he does. And then they sat down.
Someone's like, can you just put a shirt on, please? Like,
yeah. Just oily muscles.
Oh God. Incredible. Okay, this is fine.
Someone just like sees him and goes and gets a bucket of water and throws it at him. Like, calm down. Like,
dude, take a cold shower. Come on. Oh, that's great. This is
really?
I need to read that saga.
This actually goes really well into this next book.
Oh yay!
Cool.
Unrestrained. Segue. Yes, I wanted to mention a bit on the cults of Freyja and Freyja.
Okay.
I can never pronounce. I'm just going to say Frey as Freyja, because otherwise it's going to get really confusing. So what we see in the kind of like conversion world of the Viking Age is that Freyja becomes a figure of intense interest for Christians because she is in many ways the antithesis of the Virgin Mary. There's a paper by Reaves 2008 that really goes into that. So she's a deity of immense sexual appetites and virility, and we actually see that across pretty much all of the Vanir. It seems to be a very a recurrent theme.
It's a cultural thing. Sorry.
Yeah, they're very much into all of that. So yeah, there are a number of cults dedicated to both Freyja and Frey, and it goes without saying that it's highly likely that those dedicated themselves to them will look to mimic their qualities. We know of a prominent and large cults to Freyja that persevered in Iceland, even after the conversion to various degrees, though its practices were kept secret, as was law. Saxo comments on how the priests of Frey seemed effeminate. I think they were saying sort of hand movements and like ringing of bells or whatnot.
They have to keep their hands limber.
There's also
bells are gay. Did you know that?
I'm sorry. Not that sorry.
Yeah, there's also evidence that suggests that certain quote-unquote Ergi traits were shared across priests and worshippers of Freyja and Njortha, suggesting that this was considered normal among Vanir devotees. So, hashtag the Vanir are LGBTQIA plus icons.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah, it's been suggested that the popularity of Freyja and Frey across Scandinavia in a pre- and post-conversion world is one of the reasons that we have so few stories of them in the lore. It was an act essentially to quench whatever remnants of worship remains. If there's no stories about them, how will their teachings be passed on? Frey was seen as the king of kings in Sweden, but it was Freyja that perhaps drew more of the ire, as she is a goddess defined by agency and independence and personal power. Magic was seen as women's sphere in particular, and Freyja was its master, something to be feared as it could turn the fates of men. I want to touch again on that bit that I mentioned earlier about Reaves in 2008 stating that Freyja was the antithesis of the Virgin Mary. And, many of the tenets that the Christian priests held to, namely celibacy. We know that there was no such rule for heathen priests to be celibate because I think the title was hereditary, so family was pretty much required. Yeah, so the focus on virility and sexuality and passion and all of the Vanir stand for would have been represented, I keep saying this word, the antithesis of women in Christianity. They were mostly supposed to be submissive and chaste. So it's quite easy to see how the two religions, as it were, heathenry and Christianity, would have clashed in a conversion world. But yes, to get more onto the point here, Freyja is a goddess associated with love. All kinds of love, all of it. Full stop, period. There is no caveat there. Gay love included. All love. Yeah.
Love me, say that
Freyja is a pan icon.
Yeah.
What?
Song clips from Theo. I'm gonna make a whole compilation of those.
Okay.
Yeah. Nowhere does it say that Freyja was only about hetero love. That is not a thing. We can assume that her devotees were probably bisexual or lesbians or
Flexible.
Yeah, flexible, exactly. And I think it's a rather common theme among modern heathens that Freyja is a bit of a feminist icon.
Very feminist
in that
icon.
Very feminist icon. She's very much about agency and sexual agency and personal power and empowerment and self-love and all of that, which we've talked about in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That is also who you referenced when you talked about poly representation a little earlier, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lordy Freyja had partners. Yeah. Bless her. Love for everybody.
She is, as much as we do like to lean on the fact that she is also a battle and death goddess, and that is absolutely true. The sort of the love aspects to her. I think I get onto this a bit later on in my notes, but she is very much about like carnal desire,
Mm-hmm.
and that's definitely not just towards men. So. Okay, I'll get onto the meat here that I wanted to mention.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, Seid as sexual magic. I'm going to put a sound effect in there. I've decided. There's numerous sources on this, but it's a pretty robust paradigm that Seid itself, or in various branches of performance of it, involved a sexual element that made it so horrifying to certain Viking Age people and beyond. We can probably trace this back to the Vanir, in that their strong connection to fertility and sexual potency and virility, and all that may have trickled into their practice of their magic, because let's not forget that Seid came from the Vanir. In the sagas, there tends to be a heavy innuendo slash sexual connotations in regards to the staff used, the gander, and the acts that may have been done with it. It's pretty prominent all the way throughout of relating the staff to phallus or phallic representation. Early academics tend to lean very heavy on the actual or imitated sexual acts performed during a Seid ritual. I've put Lindqvist here in 1923. And modern scholars have pondered on similar roles, namely that sexual acts were performed or imitated during the ritual. Perhaps ecstasy here was used to achieve trance. Nonetheless, there is also a strong component around rejuvenation, revitalization, and life-giving aspects of Seid that fall directly in line with the Vanir aspect of it. Obviously, the Vanir are very much about life and fertility and, all of that. I believe that certain objectives will require certain techniques. and this may have been one of them. So if you were going to use Seither, for instance, to there's like a resurrection sort of element to it that we see in the lore. So that may have involved some sort of imitation or actual sexual acts. And of course, Odin himself echoes this sexual element. He is a god of frenzy and war and poetry, and seemingly 100 other things to go with his countless names. But he remains Lord of Asgard despite the accusations of Ergi and unmanliness. By all regards, he shrugs them off. He is no stranger to seduction and luring women through the use of magic. He is a god of ecstasy. It's a short trip from frenzy into violence, especially as it is presented in the lore. Think berserker trances and the violence that ensued from them. It's interesting here that we have two gods, Odin and Freyja, that are associated with the sex and Seither and war, and that is probably going to be a story for my full-length Seither episode. Right. One of my favourite academics, Neil Price, does go into some interesting detail on this, suggesting that the Norse didn't really have typical love gods. They were more in line with carnal desire, virility, and passion, presented by another equivalent being Aphrodite, rather than, as he puts it, the chaste sexuality of Venus. It tends to be rather, in a way, goal-driven. They kind of the sexual acts and the kind of virility and fertility aspects, which would fall in line with the image of Seither, sexual acts to achieve a goal. Saying all of that, we also have Seither appearances in the lore that clearly didn't involve sexual acts, such as the Saga of Eric the Red, arguably our most detailed account of a Seither ritual, which doesn't mention any sort of sex being performed on the high seat. I think we would have noticed. So it may have only been used to achieve certain things, or indeed certain groups might have used it. Regardless, many academics believe that Seither involved homosexual and bisexual acts, an obvious conclusion to draw if we were to follow the string, so to speak. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but the idea of stripping women and their power through demonizing them, calling them witches and all of that has a long history, and it absolutely comes into play here. A similar aspect of a gay relationship would have also been seen as unmanly, as the idea of any man being a bottom, that is to say a woman, was seen as abhorrent. There's a lot of power dynamics at play in all of Norse lore and the sagas, giving and taking power through sexual acts of violence, especially. There we go. That's my spiel. I will get into more detail about Seither at some point.
We will do a Seither episode.
Yes.
So, yeah, long story short, Seither probably did involve some aspect of sex of some sort, and it would definitely not have just been between a man and a woman. I'm pretty sure we don't have any instances in the lore or sagas of men and women performing Seither at the same time. It tends to be just a man, just men, or just women.
Right.
So the conclusion's there. So.
Yeah. While I was...
Might be like one example.
Yeah. That was one of the things I noticed while I was kind of breezing through trying to find a couple references or implications of homosexuality. There's not a lot there for lesbians. We have a couple for the gays, but there's not a lot of implications or references to lesbianism that I could find. And I could be wrong. I may have just not researched hard enough.
I think you're right. I've researched that sort of area before, and it's a case of, because women were always the bottoms anyway, a lesbian relationship wasn't seen as abhorrent in any way, or ergy and manly. They were just vibing. I mean, and also because like a household would have, say, like the lord of the household, and then he would have but the lord of the household will also have concubines and all of that, and slave women that he did sleep with. It's highly likely that the wife may have also had relations with these concubines and stuff, but it wasn't seen as out of the ordinary,
right, it was just
as it were. It wouldn't have been noteworthy.
Yeah, no one needed to write that down. Everybody knows how that works.
Yeah, so you've got loads of women in one place, and seemingly no kind of like negative, that as we know,
no stigma
connotations. So no stigma, no taboo against women and women, as we said, because one of them, it was assumed that both would be submissive.
Right.
So.
Sif, I'm going to ask you something,
Same power
because you've researched this, and we can cut this out if we need to, but it was a thing that I found in researching a little bit of Seder. I think it was in Jenny Blain's book. She said that Ergi was a label applied to women in masculine roles as well, and I cannot find where she referenced that. It's supposed to be in women in Old Norse society, and I cannot find it.
I've just opened up 9 Worlds of Seid-Magic, see if it's in there.
It might have been in Gate is Open. I think it's in Gate is Open.
Okay, I'll get that over.
I don't know if it's the same author. I'm making things up. I just want to know
Katie
if
Garrett.
Ergi was applied to women who took on masculine sexual roles, because nothing that I have read supports that claim. She cited it.
1 second. 162, page 162. Go. Oh boy, 162, 164, 165. On Ergi. Okay, it says here, Ergi is often translated loosely as unmanly or acting as a woman. I don't know. I don't think I would. I mean, considering it's always said to be acting as a woman, it sounds a bit weird to describe.
That's how I feel about it. I have a screenshot of the quote I'm talking about. It doesn't have the page number because it was on a Kindle, but it was very weird. If you haven't come across it, I'm going to say that that was an extrapolation that she made and not a specific source she cited.
I would say I don't recall ever seeing a woman being referred to as Ergi because by its definition it's
That woman's acting like
womanly.
a woman.
Yeah. Oh, that woman is acting unmanly.
Oh, wow. Good job, guys.
It's like, okay. Or effeminate. Yeah, that seems a bit odd. I mean, it's possible that I can see it kind of happening, but in a kind of like a reverse aspect of the woman taking on more of a man and a word similar to that being used. Yeah, but I mean, we have instances of the law of women being warriors and being like queens at fort and all that, and I don't recall ever seeing a similar word being used. So I don't know. I'll look into.
I've tried. Good luck. It's hard.
Oh dear. Oh, the never-ending journey of being a heathen.
Yes. Yeah, seriously. So in my doc, I have a couple sources that we're probably going to throw in the description, which is cool, including, we'll just go through and name some of them. There's a book, I think, called Queer Vikings, Transgression of Gender and Same-Sex Encounters in the Late Iron Age and Early Medieval Scandinavia. Great source for heathen gay shit. Women in Old Norse society touches on ergi and sexuality, which is super cool. The LGBTQ reclamation of ergi in Norse heathenry is an article/blog post on the Skald's Keep, which is a fun read. And another article/blog post called Queer Life in the Viking Age is a pretty good overview. They have a really good source list. They make some extrapolations, which is fine, but know that going into it. And it does fall victim to the shaman trap. It talks about the cult of Frey and that ecstatic shamanistic practice. So be aware before you go into that. Those links will likely be in the description.
Curse you, shaman trap.
God, it's rough.
I mean,
it's fine.
It's prevalent. Yeah, anyway, that's a conversation for another time. I could go on around.
We'll do a whole episode on the shaman trap, the problems of the shaman trap.
It's so ubiquitous, it's so everywhere that you feel like you're fighting against a rising tide of just but there's academic and I don't care. So we just step away from it.
Sif, do you have any other sources you want to say out loud so that we remember to put them in the description?
Oh boy. I think I read a couple of the ones that you mentioned. I also did use all my sources are academic. Reaves, spelled with Reaves, from 2008, which talks about the cults of Frey and Freyja. Neil Price's The Viking Way, which is my perpetual recommendation for breaking down everything to do with Seitha. I think that's basically it. Those are the two sources that I used, and also my copious notes that I've made anyway. So my brain thoughts.
I would like to cite my own brain, please.
Sif's brain.
I have done that. I have cited things as well. Sif told me.
Same.
Okay.
I'm just very. I've narrowed in on a specialty, a speciality, and I enjoy it. And I'm not my little niche, my little rabbit hole, and I'm not coming out.
Little Valkyrie hole.
Yeah, my little Valkyrie, Seitha, Freyja hole in hell.
It's a good hole to be in. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It's simultaneously a lot of information out there, no research out there.
Isn't that fun?
Just in the middle, yeah.
Okay.
It's fun anyway.
Is there anything else either of you would like to bring up, address, or revisit for a hot sec?
The Vanir are LGBTQIA plus icons. Freyr is amazing. Frey is great. That's basically it. Frey is very much about loving whoever the heck you love. Gay pride, trans rights.
Odin says trans rights. We should put that link down there too.
Yep.
Yes. My thoughts on it are, if you, Millie, can I have my thoughts?
No, only Millie's thoughts, no Theo thoughts.
Good. Anyways, so my thoughts are that if you care enough about someone else's life and how they live it when they're not hurting anyone else, that you go beyond the basic level of respect. Why? I feel like that says more about someone else, like that person as a person, and like what they need to work on than anything else.
I think you're totally right.
That's my spicy take for the
so spicy
end of the episode.
So spicy. Right. Thank you guys for joining us for this Pride. It was real gay. I really liked it. There are links in our description for our Discord server, which is free to join, our Patreon, where we have our Pride collection of merch. It was our first collection because we're a bunch of queers, and we made sure that we had all of the colors represented. If there's a flag that you don't see, tell me and I'll make it. I want them to all be there. Check that out.
Same.
On our Redbubble store. Did I say Patreon and then dive right into merch? I am so professional. I'm the most professional. The cool gay merch is on Redbubble. The Patreon is also cool, arguably also gay, but it's not where the merch is.
Accurate.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Don't forget to weave a connection between the like, subscribe, and bell buttons so you know when we upload new episodes. And also, additionally, keep Heathenry weird and also gay.
Yay!
True.